First contact in the classroom. The classroom smelled faintly of chalk and recycled air, a mundane scent that belonged more to Earth than to the far-flung colony of Ravenine. Wooden desks, scratched and chipped from years of use, were arranged neatly in rows. The hum of fluorescent lights mingled with the nervous whispers of human children. For most of the galaxy's young, school was a place of learning, of arithmetic and history, of carefully monitored physical training. But today, something far more dangerous had arrived. At the front of the room, the doorway shivered with authority. Two alien attendants stepped aside, revealing the true spectacle, a predator-class hunter. It was a towering, muscular being, its ridged, chitinous skin glinting faintly under the classroom lights. Its multi-lensed mask gleamed, scanning the room with methodical precision. A sleek, retractable wrist blade slid free, humming with energy. Even standing still, it radiated menace, the kind of predator that had hunted entire species to near extinction. Children shrank in their seats. Some buried their heads in their desks. Some whispered frantic prayers in languages their teachers didn't even recognize. The room smelled faintly of fear. All except one. He sat at the very center of the room, elbows resting casually on the desk. The Human Deathworlder, 17 years old, and yet he radiated something older, something forged in planetary crucibles that no alien could survive. His uniform was plain, his posture relaxed, but his eyes flicked to the predator with a sharp, calculating gaze. And he smiled, a small, confident curve of lips that was neither arrogance nor ignorance. It was understanding. The predator stepped forward, its every movement a predatory calculation. Its claws clicked on the tile floor, a metallic sound that seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence. It tested the air with its sense of smell, its multi-lens eyes zooming from desk to desk, scanning each child. The aliens observing from the back, faculty and diplomats alike, watched with barely concealed amusement. They had brought this predator to demonstrate superiority, to remind humans that their species, while clever, was fragile, weak, and easily dominated. The teacher raised a hand, voice steady despite the palpable tension. "Remember," she said quietly, "observe. Stay calm. This is only a demonstration. A demonstration to the predator, to the aliens, perhaps even to themselves. But for the human children, it felt like a trial by fire." The predator paused mid-step, tilting its head slightly, as if intrigued by the single boy who hadn't flinched. The Deathworlder met its gaze evenly. In that moment, a silent exchange passed between them. The predator saw no fear, no panic, no instinct to flee. Only calculation, only the faint smile of someone who had survived where others would have died. And then the predator moved. It advanced with deliberate menace, each step measured, claws scraping lightly against the desk legs. Its targeting systems glowed, scanning for weak points, for hesitation, for the perfect opening. The other students gasped, some crawling under tables, some frozen in awe and terror. The Deathworlder, however, remained where he was. His mind raced, analyzing posture, weight distribution, the way the predator shifted its massive frame. Every twitch, every micromotion, told him something about the hunter's intent. The room seemed impossibly small for a creature of such lethal potential. Yet for the Deathworlder, space was never a limitation. Every inch of this classroom became a part of the battlefield in his mind. Desk corners, chairs, walls, even the faint reflection of light across the windows. He calculated escape routes, tactical advantages, and, if necessary, a counterattack. The predator paused again, tilting its head, sensing the challenge. Its movements slowed, almost imperceptibly, as if it realized this human was different. The diplomats whispered among themselves. Surely no human could withstand a predator, especially not one so young. Yet here he sat, calm, confident, smiling faintly as the alien examined him like a curious specimen. "Impressive," one alien muttered under its breath, a hint of disbelief threading through the syllables. The Deathworlder leaned back slightly, resting a hand lightly on the edge of his desk. His voice, calm and steady, broke the silence. "You're predictable," he said, almost conversationally, "and you move like you've hunted only the unprepared. Let's see how you handle someone who isn't." A ripple of tension shot through the room. The teacher froze, unsure if she should intervene. The predator's head tilted, glowing sensors locking onto the boy's face. Then, for the first time, it emitted a low, guttural sound, more curiosity than threat. The classroom was no longer just a room. It was a stage. The predator, a weapon of unmatched lethality. And a human? He was something altogether different. A Deathworlder. Someone forged in environments designed to kill. Someone who had stared down impossible odds and grinned. The alien observers, the children, the teacher, all knew instinctively that this day would be remembered. Not for the predator's power, not for the alien's demonstration, but for the boy who didn't flinch, who smiled, who had already turned fear into strategy. And the predator, unfamiliar with this breed of human, paused just slightly, because for the first time, it sensed that it might not be the hunter. The hunt begins. The predator moved like a shadow, silent yet impossible to ignore. Its claws scraped the edge of the desks with mechanical precision, and the classroom lights flickered faintly, as if sensing the tension in the air. The alien observers leaned forward, confident. "This human won't last 10 seconds," one whispered to another. But the Deathworlder didn't flinch. He sat with the same calm, calculating expression he had displayed from the start, arms crossed loosely over his chest. His eyes tracked the predator's movements, every minute shift in weight, every twitch of a claw, every hiss of res-pirated air through its mask. In the deadliest worlds humans had colonized, he had learned to survive against predators far larger, faster, and deadlier than this. He had learned to turn the environment itself into a weapon. The predator lunged suddenly, a blur of muscle and armor, aiming to force the boy from his desk. In the instant before impact, the Deathworlder rolled aside, kicking a chair leg with exact timing. The chair toppled, striking the predator's shin with a metallic clang. It staggered slightly, annoyed but far from defeated. The alien's surprise was clear. Most humans didn't move like this, didn't think like this. "Predictable," the Deathworlder muttered under his breath. The students in the classroom were screaming now, some crying outright. They ducked under desks, pressed themselves against walls, or huddled together. But a few couldn't help but peek at the unfolding spectacle, their eyes wide with a mix of terror and awe. For the first time, many of them realized that the human they had laughed at for being just a kid was not just unafraid. He was formidable. The predator adjusted, its multi-lensed eyes zooming in. It began circling, testing the Deathworlder, studying his stance. The boy stayed perfectly still, calculating. He recognized patterns in the alien's movement, an almost imperceptible delay before it struck, a predictable angle in its lunges. For most humans, the creature's speed would have been fatal. For him, it was data. Then, almost casually, he leaned back and kicked over a desk. The wooden top slammed into the predator's side, eliciting a sharp metallic grunt. The alien spun, momentarily distracted, and the Deathworlder sprang into action. Using the desk as cover, he rolled forward, grabbing a small, metal-framed chair like a battering ram. The predator's claw swipe met only empty air. He ducked, using the chair to knock it off balance. The room erupted into a mix of screams and whispers. The alien observers gasped audibly. Out, one breathed. The Deathworlder's mind worked faster than they could comprehend. Every piece of furniture became part of a makeshift battlefield. Books, chairs, desks. He moved them with precision, creating obstacles that slowed the predator's movements. The alien had never faced prey that could think, adapt, and fight back at the same time. Even more astonishing, he began using the other children as part of his strategy, without putting them in harm's way. A quick gesture here, a shouted warning there, a leaning desk to funnel the predator's movement. The Deathworlder orchestrated the environment like a maestro conducting a symphony of survival. The predator roared, frustration echoing through the classroom. It lunged again, faster this time, energy blades slicing through the air. The Deathworlder sidestepped, ducked, and grabbed a small, overturned desk, swinging it with force. The desk struck the alien across the jaw, denting its mask. Sparks flew. The predator snarled, momentarily stunned. For the first time, the alien hesitated. Its confidence faltered. This human wasn't just clever. He was relentless, precise, and fearless. The Deathworlder's grin widened slightly. He could feel the predator's uncertainty, and it was intoxicating. A few of the human students, emboldened by his courage, began to mimic his tactics, pushing chairs into narrow gaps, yelling distractions, even tossing light equipment. Together, they weren't just students. They were collaborators in a survival experiment orchestrated by the galaxy's deadliest human prodigy. The predator, realizing it was not facing ordinary prey, let out a low, resonant growl that echoed against the walls. Its movements became cautious, deliberate. Every strike was measured, every step considered, and the Deathworlder mirrored it, reading each action before it happened, exploiting every micro-flinch, every tiny pause. The alien observers leaned back, astonishment etched across their faces. It's like he's predicting it, one whispered. This human, he's dangerous. The Deathworlder didn't lower his guard, didn't underestimate the predator, even for a second. But the thrill of the hunt, the adrenaline of survival, danced in his veins. He knew this was more than a lesson for the students. It was a declaration to the galaxy. Humans were not fragile. They were not weak. And a Deathworlder was proof of everything the universe had underestimated. By the time the predator paused, circling the classroom warily, the Deathworlder had already identified its patterns. He was ready for the next move, ready to turn fear into strategy, strategy into triumph. And all the while, his grin never faded, because he knew that in the deadliest worlds, humans didn't run. Humans didn't panic. Humans smiled. Predator versus Deathworlder. The classroom had transformed. What had once been a place of learning, desks neatly arranged, sunlight streaming through windows, was now a battlefield of opportunity. Overturned chairs, scattered books, and smudged chalk lines created an intricate maze. The predator moved through it with lethal intent, its glowing targeting systems scanning every shadow, every corner, every trembling student. But the Deathworlder stood at the center of it all, calm, poised, and smiling. The faint curve of his lips was a challenge as much as it was a statement. You cannot intimidate me. The predator lunged, faster than thought, aiming a swipe that could cleave through bone and armor alike. The Deathworlder sidestepped with the fluid grace of someone who had danced with death on more worlds than most species had even charted. His motion was precise, effortless. In a single sweep, he kicked a desk across the predator's path, forcing it to redirect mid-lunge. Sparks flew as claws struck metal instead of flesh. The alien growled, frustration vibrating through the air. It recalibrated, circling, calculating, seeking an opening. It had never faced prey like this, prey that didn't flee, that didn't scream, that didn't panic. The Deathworlder's eyes scanned a room, noting every weak point in the environment, every possible trap. His brain processed hundreds of variables per second. The predator's weight distribution, its stride length, the trajectory of its blades. And then he struck. With a lightning-fast pivot, the Deathworlder vaulted over a desk, grabbed a metal chair, and slammed it into the predator's side. The impact reverberated through the room. For the first time, the predator stumbled, a calculated misstep the Deathworlder had anticipated. He didn't hesitate. Using its momentary imbalance, he ducked low, rolling across the floor to another vantage point behind a cluster of desks. Predictable, he muttered, almost casually. You rely too much on strength, too little on imagination. The predator snarled and adjusted, blade slicing through air mere inches from the Deathworlder's head. He ducked, narrowly avoiding a strike that could have ended him. Sparks flew, and the sound of metal scraping metal filled the classroom. Students watched from behind overturned desks, and fear mingling in equal measure. Some whispered, He's not just a human. He's something else. The Deathworlder used that something else to his advantage. He vaulted onto a table, flipping a stack of books into the predator's path, causing it to skid slightly. In that instant, he lashed out with a swing of a chair leg, striking the predator's mask. A faint dent appeared, a crack of armor that should have been impossible for a human his size. The predator hissed in irritation and surprise. But the Deathworlder didn't stop. He moved like water, flowing through the room, exploiting every desk, every chair, every shadow. The predator tried to predict him, tried to corner him, but the Deathworlder was always one step ahead. Every attack it launched was met with calculated evasion. Every trap set was countered with subtle manipulation. A group of human students, emboldened by his prowess, began helping in small ways, pushing chairs into narrow paths, knocking over books to distract, even shouting warnings about the predator's angles. The Deathworlder acknowledged them with a slight nod, a silent cue that their improvisation was part of the strategy. For the first time, the predator wasn't hunting a single human. It was contending with an entire team guided by the instincts of a Deathworlder. The predator hissed in frustration and lunged with all the force of its massive frame. The Deathworlder anticipated the strike, sidestepped, and tripped the alien over a chair. It fell heavily, claws scraping against the tile floor, sparks flying from its armor. He didn't move in for a kill. He never intended to. This was about demonstration, about sending a message. Humans, even the young, were not weak, and Deathworlders were forces unto themselves. The alien observers, previously smug, now leaned forward with disbelief. "It's impossible," one muttered. "This child, he's turning a predator into prey." The Deathworlder's grin widened slightly. There was no arrogance, only confidence. He could feel the predator's hesitation, the first crack in its supreme confidence. The massive hunter, built to dominate, to terrify, to kill, had never faced prey that anticipated its every move, adapted instantly, and struck with precision that belied youth. Finally, the predator paused, chest heaving under armor, claws retracting slightly. It met the Deathworlder's gaze and emitted a low, guttural sound, an acknowledgement, a warning, and perhaps the first hint of respect. The room was silent, except for the sound of the predator's respirator-like hiss. The students stared in awe. The alien faculty whispered urgently among themselves. Humans were not what they had believed. The Deathworlder stepped forward calmly, resting a hand on the edge of the overturned desk he had used moments before. "Fear is weakness," he said simply, almost as a lesson. "And humans, we are never weak." He smiled again, faint, unshakable. A predator had entered a human classroom expecting dominance, terror, and surrender. Instead, it had found strategy, adaptability, and courage. And in that silent, charged moment, the predator, lethal, seasoned, and superior in every other way, understood that for humans, fear was optional, and the Deathworlders were something else entirely. The classroom held its breath. Humanity had not only survived the first strike, it had asserted dominance through intellect, instinct, and the indomitable will of a Deathworlder. And the predator, for the first time in its long, violent history, hesitated. Humans triumph by smiling. The classroom was quiet now, the tension thick enough to taste. Dust and papers floated in the golden shafts of sunlight streaming through the tall windows. The predator, massive and lethal, paused in the center of the room. Its multi-lensed eyes glowed dimly, tracking the human who had turned its assault into a lesson in futility. The Deathworlder didn't move. He leaned casually against a desk, arms crossed, his faint smile unwavering. Around him, the classroom bore the scars of the confrontation: overturned chairs, scattered books, and a thin smear of scorch marks from sparks flying off the predator's claws. Yet the human boy remained unscathed, untouchable, and calm. For a moment, the predator considered retreat. It had faced countless prey, from the smallest scavengers of desolate moons to the fiercest warriors of distant colonies. But never before had it encountered a human who didn't flee, who didn't panic, who didn't fight blindly, but instead turned fear into a tactical advantage. It could feel the instinctive confidence radiating from the boy, Deathworlder bred, honed on planets that would have killed lesser beings without a second thought. The Deathworlder finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. You came to demonstrate superiority, to intimidate. And yet here we are. You've learned nothing new about us, but perhaps now you'll understand something about yourself. The predator shifted its weight, hissing softly. It had tried intimidation, aggression, and even the full force of its physical power. Every attack had been anticipated, every movement countered. The alien observers at the back of the room exchanged anxious glances. The human child wasn't just surviving. He was asserting dominance. Around them, the other students began to rise cautiously from their hiding places. Some had wide eyes, some trembling, but all of them carried a spark of newfound courage. They had witnessed human ingenuity, precision, and bravery in action. They had seen their classmate manipulate the battlefield, orchestrate distractions, and outthink a predator whose sole purpose was to kill. And they had learned something that no alien demonstration could teach them. Humans were not helpless. The predator snarled, lowering its claws, and for the first time, it hesitated to strike. Its glowing sensors flickered uncertainly. It had expected fear, panic, submission. Instead, it had met calculation, adaptability, and a grin. That small, unassuming smile carried a message. Humans faced impossible odds, and they thrived. The Deathworlder stepped forward, his movements smooth, controlled. He didn't attack. He didn't gloat. He merely stood, a living testament to what humans could endure. The predator's gaze followed him, conflicted emotions flickering across its alien mind. Respect, frustration, confusion. It had been bested not by strength, but by intelligence, instinct, and indomitable will. Understand this, the Deathworlder continued, his voice calm, carrying across the room. We survive. We adapt. And we do not fear death, because we know life is worth defending no matter the odds. The predator emitted a low, guttural sound, a mixture of acknowledgement and warning. Slowly, almost reluctantly, it retracted its claws and stepped back. The threat had not been eliminated, but a balance had been established. This human was not prey. He was a force to be reckoned with. The alien observers were stunned into silence. One finally whispered, "They underestimated us, all of us. These humans, they are something else entirely." The others nodded, their eyes wide with realization. The message was clear. Humanity, even in youth, was lethal not through brute force, but through ingenuity, adaptability, and an indomitable spirit. The human students, emboldened, began to gather their desks, their trembling giving way to laughter and relief. One whispered to another, "He made it look easy." Another said, "I think we're stronger than we thought." The classroom, once a place of terror, now buzzed with the quiet triumph of learning a deeper truth about their own species. The Deathworlder returned to his seat, brushing off his hands as though nothing extraordinary had happened. He picked up a piece of chalk, as if to resume his lesson, a subtle reminder that for humans, extraordinary danger was simply part of ordinary life. He grinned faintly at the predator, a mixture of amusement and quiet warning. "You came to show us what fear looks like," he said softly. "But you learned something yourself. Humans, we don't just survive. We endure. We adapt. And if necessary, we strike back." The predator, still standing, regarded him once more before retreating through the doorway, silent and cautious. It had faced a human and survived, but it had been humbled. Across the galaxy, the predator would tell stories of this encounter, stories of a species that was underestimated at its own peril. The Deathworlder leaned back in his chair, faint sunlight catching the edges of his uniform. He didn't celebrate. There was no need. His calm confidence, his unshakable grin, spoke louder than any words ever could. The classroom, now silent, bore witness not just to survival, but to triumph. In that moment, humanity's reputation grew, not through conquest, not through fear, but through resilience, intelligence, and the simple courage to smile in the face of death itself. And the Deathworlder, as always, was at the center, proof that humans, when tested by the deadliest challenges, could turn the universe's greatest predators into reluctant witnesses of their enduring might.